Live, local. This is Fox 12 Now.
Hello, everyone. This is Fox 12 Now. I'm Greg Nibbler. Thanks for joining us. That is our live look there from our Maryhill camera at the Columbia River. It is very nice outside, and as you can see, some people out there enjoying it. If you look in the upper left-hand corner, I just noticed that. I think that's a smudge on the camera, so don't think there's some kind of weird cloud just sitting there. But nonetheless, still looks pretty nice out there right now, and we do appreciate you joining us. So again, we cover a wide range of topics here. We're live from the Fox 12 Oregon newsroom, and today we are talking about dredging the Columbia River. So if you're going to be doing any traveling along the Columbia here, especially over these next couple of months, you may see the Dredge Oregon, the vessel out there pulling stuff up from the bottom of the river. And that's for a lot of important reasons, for the economy, to help ships get through. But what do they do with all of that? Like, how does this happen? What's the process behind this? That's what we wanted to cover today, just to get some information on it. And to do so, we have the Director of Navigation for the Port of Portland, Don Chestelson, who is joining us right now. There he is. And Don, thanks for being here.
Thank you.
And I'm excited to learn more about this. It's something I always hear about, but I was like, I don't really know how this happens or what goes on with all of that material. So I think, if you wouldn't mind kicking us off, can you just talk about like how long we've been doing that for the Columbia River and what some of those important reasons are?
Well, sure. And thanks for having me on, by the way. For context, the Dredge Oregon is a vessel that owned by the Port of Portland. It's responsible for making sure the lower Columbia is deep enough and wide enough for ships to safely and efficiently move between Portland and the mouth of the river. We're out every year from June through December, removing a lot of material off the bottom of that channel so we can keep the navigation channel open. Dredging itself is an age-old process of economic importance all over the world. Here in Oregon, more specifically, the Port of Portland's history of dredging is as old as the port is itself. The Oregon legislature established the Port of Portland in 1891 with a specific mission of dredging a navigation channel from Portland to the mouth of the Columbia. The early leaders also invested in roads, railways, and eventually runways to position Portland as a city, as an international trade hub like it is today. Without dredging, Portland would be a much different city and a much smaller city. It's incredibly important to our region's economy, and dredging really contributes to the economic prosperity of everyone in the region.
And so this is just taking that material that just naturally settles there in the bottom of the river through natural processes. Is that where it's all coming from?
That is correct. Each year, actually, as we speak, materials coming down that river. Actually, how it works is we operate a called cutter suction dredge. And my analogy is always an egg beater and a shop vac. The egg beater being the cutter, which is a 6-foot diameter object that's spinning at about 30 revolutions per minute. It's agitating the material we're digging in. And then my reference to the shop vac is a 30-inch pipe that is driven by a 4,000 horsepower pump. So as we're agitating the bottom of the river, by the way, it's on a long arm out the front of the dredge. It's lowered into the river at a specific elevation. As that material is being agitated, that pump is sucking the material through that pipe. And we are then, it's hooked to up to 2 miles of pipe out the back of the dredge, which gives us a lot of flexibility in where we can put that material. We either put it back in the water in another location outside the channel. Remembering we're keeping that channel open. We're keeping that 43 feet deep, 600 feet wide. We're either distributing it to another part of the river. We can do what we call beach nourishment, which we're distributing it to an island, and maybe extending that island out a couple hundred feet for maybe the distance of a half a mile. Or we're doing what we call upland placement. Excuse me, sorry.
Oh, I was just saying, wow, that's a lot of extension in there.
Yeah, and sometimes we're doing that in residential areas, which is kind of gratifying. A lot of what we do is upland placement, where we're taking that material out of the channel and placing it up on top of an island. So we've got 2 miles of pipe, it floats on the river. goes on top of the island. We've got a whole different operation up there with dozers, loaders, light plants. They're working 24 hours a day, as the dredge does. And the primary purpose up there, the goal is to separate that sand from the water, let the sand settle out. We create basins with the dozers and weirs, and then return the water back to the river. So those are really the three types of placements we do.
Wow.
We're always taking it out of the channel, putting it back in the river, putting it along a beach, or sticking it up on an island.
So that there's so much there that to talk about too, because I want to get into each one of those things. But talking about as far as the river depth, what is it that you're taking it from? How many feet are you taking down each time that you're doing these dredges?
That's a great question. The channel is 43 feet deep. That was established early 2000s with the channel deepening project. So the channel is 43 feet deep, 600 feet wide. What we're doing is going in anywhere that it's not 43 feet deep or 600 feet wide. We're removing the material to get back to those dimensions. So there's material constantly coming into that box that we want to keep open for the ships.
Yeah, and that just would assume allows for bigger and bigger ships that are able to pass through and come up the Columbia.
That is correct. And some of these large ships you see, that 43 feet, it's very critical if that would go to 42 or even 41 or 40. Some of those ships, when they're loaded, are drafting 40, 41 feet. So they're just barely off the bottom of that channel. So it's really important that we keep that down to 43 feet.
Wow. I mean, and I'm sure there's a lot of, I keep saying wow throughout this interview, so for anybody commenting on that, but it's interesting. So in order to, I'm sure there's all kinds of different scientific equipment and different ways that you're monitoring that probably constantly to see if that happens, if things do start filling back up, less than 40 feet.
That's really where the Corps of Engineers comes in, and we're in a great partnership with them. They really do all the surveying on the river, so they're identifying these areas as they happen, and we're taking direction from them as where to go and where the critical areas are. There's some areas that pop up periodically. There's some areas that are problem areas constantly. There's material just coming in. One of those being the mouth of the Cowlitz, which is still affected by Mount St. Helens, the gift that keeps on giving. There's constantly material coming into the channel from those areas. So that will be an area that we hit all the time.
And that's still just from the eruption, just running that sediment down?
I'm sorry?
Is that still just from the eruption? That's all that sediment that's still being washed out?
Well, the river itself, but yeah, the ash that's still in that whole river system and the rivers that flow into the Cowlitz as well. Yeah, it's still contributing to the Columbia River.
Something I just thought of that probably people are thinking at home too, or that may ask is, while you're doing all this, are there certain steps that you take to try to mitigate any environmental issues that could happen when you're dredging the bottom of a river?
Absolutely, and environmental is obviously very important to us. The material, by and large, is clean material we're taking out of the river. So we're basically taking good, clean sand out of the river. That's not true elsewhere in the United States with dredging operations, but the Columbia, we're removing very clean material and placing it on at other areas, whether it's back in the water again or up on the island.
You mentioned some of the different projects, the different use cases for that dredged material. Are there? Could you maybe give some people some highlights of some of those different things that you've done that maybe they've noticed and didn't realize that was the result of dredging the Columbia?
Yeah, that's a very good point, because if dredging is working well, you won't know about it, right? If we're doing our job, it's good that it's quiet, because the ships are still coming through the river. But there's areas that you might be surprised the recipient of beneficial use of this material. The office I'm sitting in right now on Swan Island is 100% dredge material. Oaks Park is dredge material. The Multnomah Falls parking lot is all dredge material. These are things that the public sees every day. When you fly out of PDX, that entire area is dredge fill. I believe even the Nike campus is dredge fill. So there's a lot of you can't see the dredging operations because it's 43 feet under the water. But those are some examples of things that we all feel and touch that are a result of dredging.
Wow. Yeah. Again, I keep saying wow, but that's really, that's really cool to just think about how there's different, use cases for that, but also keeping the economy going. And I know that's very important to have the Columbia River Channel open for all of these ships, and the economy of the entire region is affected
Yes.
by that. Looking at, I guess something else I just wanted to ask too, just about this is, you mentioned that it's 6 months. So you start, or roughly that, is it you start in June and the season goes till December, and then you take a break?
Yeah, we were out typically June through December. We've stayed out as long as February, March before. If there's a year that there's a lot of material to remove, there's a lot of work that has to be done on the off season. The sand is incredibly destructive to equipment. Even the pipe, you wouldn't think so, but we rotate our pipe every year, so we get even wear on it. Those pipes, if you didn't rotate them, it's kind of like a tire. You get all the wear on one side. So we rotate our pipes. We're checking the connections. We've got a lot of work to do on our dozers. They're constantly in the water on the placement sites. The sand in the water is very hard on the tracks. We go through the pumps, the engine. There's a lot of maintenance that we do every year in preparation for then the following season as we roll back out in the May, June timeframe.
Oh, and I know this particular ship too, the Dredge Oregon, has been in service for quite a long time. Is that right?
That is correct. It's coming up on 64 years, I believe, that we've had that dredge.
64 years in service. Is that
Yeah.
normal? Is that average for a dredging
No,
vessel?
that's we've got our use out of this one. Interesting you brought that up, because the history of dredging, as I mentioned earlier, we've been dredging since the late 1890s. So if you look at that time frame, in the first, just for a rough number, 60 some years, 65, 66 years, we went through 6 different dredges, by the way, all cutter suction type dredges that I explained earlier. In the second half of our dredge history at the Port of Portland, we've had the Dredge Oregon. So it's a workhorse. It's been gone through several times, but it is getting tired. And we're looking at its replacement here soon, hopefully.
Is there, with the newer ship, would there be newer kinds of technology that would change up how you do it, or is it still basically the general?
That's another really good question. Some of the electronics, some of the monitoring, of course, and we've upgraded that on our dredge as well, on the Dredge Oregon. But some of the things we'll see on a new dredge are the principle of dredging in a cutter suction dredge is going to be the same. We're still going to have that cutter head. We're going to have the pipe, the spuds, which I didn't mention, and I'll very briefly describe what they do. They kind of pen the dredge into the river while we're dredging. So there's been some technology on those as far as hydraulics, how they're positioned, but essentially it will be the same type of dredge. It will have, and as we look into the future of fuel, it's hard to tell what direction the industry is going, but this dredge will be diesel powered just like ours, but we will be able to accommodate future fuel types like maybe methanol or something as we go into the future. So it'll have that kind of technology on it.
Nice, yeah, seeing some of those updates and changes that could be coming there. Well, for people out there right now, who may be driving along the Columbia River, what section of the river are you on right now during this process?
We're just downriver from Skamakawa, and unfortunately, the Washington side of the highway there, that's where it turns up the mountain. So if you were standing on the beach at Skamakawa, you could probably look downriver and see us. We'll be downriver a little farther than that here in the next month, and then down toward Astoria. But then we'll start moving back up the river. We'll probably end the season up around across the river from Rainier, where the Cowlitz River comes in. So that's actually a really good place to see the dredge when we're in Rainier. You can see it from the park there. You can see it from the bridge as you cross the river. It's pretty impressive. You'll see it with like a barge out there, and you'll see a big snake of pipe going up onto an island. That's us.
All right, yeah, there we go. So once you make it to there, good easy spot to see it. You can definitely, there from Rainier, you can see a lot of ships through those different parks there. Well, Don, I want to say thank you very much for joining me today, for taking some time to talk about this and explain it. It's something that I feel like a lot of people know about, know it happens, but just now getting to really understand what, where, how, and why, and all of that really, I think, is beneficial. So thanks for joining us here today on Fox 12 Now.
Thank you.
All right, and for everybody watching too, we are live. So we are live here in the Fox 12 Oregon newsroom. We have different segments throughout the afternoon. So coming up at 1:30, we cover a wide range. I always say that. We're going to switch gears. We're going to be talking to director Penelope Spheris, who's here in town for some projects with the Portland Art Museum, and she directed Wayne's World. So we're going to be talking about that, plus her documentary that she's going to be showing. She's very, very instrumental in a lot of music documentaries. So interesting conversation with her. That's coming up at 1:30. We have the Fox 12 Weather podcast coming. We've got an afternoon cocktail segment, so all kinds of stuff here. So thanks for joining us. Wherever you found us, great place to watch. But don't forget to share the show, let other people know